Hello, book lovers. Welcome to Must Love Books. Welcome back to Must Love Books podcast. Today I am here with Calahan Skogman to celebrate the release of his debut novel, Blue Graffiti. Calahan is a writer, poet, and actor born in Davenport, Iowa, raised in Wisconsin. He earned his MFA at the University of Southern California School of Dramatic Arts and is best known for his leading role as Matthias Helvar in Shadow and Bone.
Hi, it's great to be here. I appreciate you having any interest in the book whatsoever. And
When this episode releases, it will actually be the day of the 6-month podcast anniversary.
oh, congratulations.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you'll
your
be
podcast.
my 33rd episode.
Oh man, I love that. I love that number too, actually, 33. Cool. Yeah, congratulations on
Thank
that.
you. It's going well, and I'm really happy with it so far.
Yeah.
How about you tell us all about Blue Graffiti?
Wow. Yeah, where do I begin? Well, it's a book that I initially wrote the first draft of about 3 years ago now. I was kind of setting off just to write something for my family and closest friends and kind of just as a creative kind of pursuit that I was just really interested in. I've always been a writer and I've always been passionate about writing, but it had never dawned on me to go try and write a novel until it did. And when it did, I kind of, for whatever audacious reason, kind of answered that call and said, all right, I'll go for it. And I just wanted to write it for myself to kind of prove that I could do something of that nature and to explore that for myself creatively. And then, yeah, like I said, share it with family and friends and just kind of as a gift to them as something that was truthful about myself, close to home to myself, a vulnerable and hopefully beautiful representation of where we were from and the things that we had in common and shared, and kind of as this love letter to the world that we were from and all of the beautiful, complex, deep intricacies of the life there. And I just kind of went for it and wrote the first draft and shared it with them. And after I'd gotten some response back from those initial readers, that was kind of when it dawned on me that maybe I would have some interest in putting it out into the world in some capacity. And that was like, honestly, a year had passed before my acting manager at the time, got his hands on it and was really, really fell in love with it. And then the tides kind of started to shift into thinking about it as a kind of a more professional pursuit and to get it published. And then I found my agent, and then we found the publishing company, and it kind of all worked out and has been a pretty smooth and exciting and surreal ride since then. Blue Graffiti stylistically is a first person stream of conscious literary fiction novel based in the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin. And it's nostalgic. It's not set in modern times, it's like a 30-year gap. So I kind of always wanted to place it there. I think that's what always felt inherently right, especially with the kind of style that I wanted to go for and how I wanted to portray this very like intimate, slow, truthful version of this world that I had grown up in and that I foresaw like my main character Cash kind of growing up in.
And your writing, you mentioned that you use the stream of consciousness style. I just want to say that your writing is so poetic and beautiful. I did read an advanced copy of Blue Graffiti and I loved it. It was so beautiful.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. When you go about writing a novel, I think you have to be truthful to the way you want to go about it. I know that that style and the style which I wrote Blue Graffiti isn't necessarily for everyone. I think that it kind of asks for a certain level of patience, certainly off the top. A kind of feeling where you can really let the book and those images and the poetry of Cash's wandering mind kind of set in for you a little bit and just trust that that's going to be the nature of the life there, and that it's not going to be like a very bombastic plot crazy driven action packed kind of novel, but it's a real slice of life. And I've always personally loved loved first person stream of consciousness style. I just feel like you can get into a real intimate place with the characters and you can really dive into some real depth of perspective and thoughts. It feels so real and accessible to me when I read it in other writers. And I just think it was always a no-brainer for me to try and paint this particular portrait through that kind of lens and through Cash's eyes. And so he could kind of really get into the beautiful details and minutia of his day to day.
Is there any part of Cash that you really relate to the most? Any part of him that your main character that you really see yourself in?
It's a good question. I think that, I've said this and I think it's true, is that nothing in the book is direct replicas of anything from real life. I think as writers, a lot of times, especially in this kind of novel, you have to rely on your own life and your own dreams and visions and memories and all of that, of course. So it's kind of a tapestry involving all of those things. And these characters are kind of born out of so many different combinations of people that I've loved or I've witnessed and et cetera, et cetera. So Cash is no different apart from the fact that, of course, he's imbued with a lot of my soul and kind of just whether it be similar wanderings or similar thoughts, or he's trying to figure out so many things. He's kind of come to this place of reconciliation and has to really address past traumas or lifelong dreams or kind of a restlessness in him, but a deep love for the place that he's rooted in. And I think that his openness and his kindness and kind of his, you know, his love for the place that he has grown up in and that he feels so attached to. I think those are all things that I shared with him. His inclination sometimes to wander about his thoughts in a very poetic nature and his attention to detail. I think I've always loved the details of life the most and the little details. And they've always seemed very important to me. And I've always felt more able to capture the essence of my life and everything that I've seen around me when I'm immersed in the details of it. So I think that's something that Cash possesses as well. And his love for his family and his loyalty and his deep compassion for everyone. Yeah, all of these things. It was a nature of exploration for me, but also, Cash is not me. It's not my life. It's not, there's a lot of differences between us as well. Like I said, it's a combination of a lot of different things, but of course, there are bits and pieces of him that hit close to home, I guess you could say.
You do such a great job of painting very vivid pictures throughout this novel and just describing the places around you. Now, I know you said that nothing is directly inspired by specific places, but are there certain places, from your life living in the Midwest that really inspired you, or is it just kind of general Midwest love?
Yeah, it is, of course, love for the Midwest at large and all of the bits and pieces that I've seen over the course of my life and been so immersed in. So there is a generality to it in that way, but also, there's towns that I, of course, was more familiar with, and the towns that I grew up in, and the neighboring towns where it's like in Blue Graffiti when Cash is describing the countryside, like that's a countryside that I've seen. And that's a countryside that I've been in love with my whole life. That was really important for me in the novel to be able to feel that kind of immersion for the reader to feel like they really were in this very specific place in Wisconsin and they could smell the same things and hear the same things and feel it because it's really necessary for the story to totally sink in because I want the reader to really feel what it's like to be there. And I think that's essential in hopefully getting the reader to feel what Cash feels as far as his love for the place, his attachment to the state in general, and also why it has this power over him in a sense, and this attachment and love. So yes, it's the state as a whole, but it's so many different towns that I was raised in and familiar with. And when I was able to write it, I have so many direct, visceral memories. And yeah, I close my eyes and I can see the Midwest and feel and taste and smell it like it's right outside my door, even when I'm in Los Angeles. So that was always going to be an important part of telling this story to make sure that I got the setting as real as I possibly could.
Well, reading it while being in the Midwest, you succeeded.
I really appreciate that. From one Midwesterner to another.
And so your writing is very poetic, and I know that you do a little poetry writing as well. You share some of it on Instagram and through your Patreon. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, poetry was what I started writing. I would never classify myself as a poet by any means, ever. But I will say that it's always been a staple of my life in the sense of I've always been writing it, even when I was far too young to understand it or far too young to even understand what it was that I was writing. I used to write loads of indecipherable nonsense, and then like give them to my mother and or whoever was around me and just like see like what their reactions were. And I just loved that. And it was always a way for me to kind of deal with my life and deal with so many overwhelming feelings and thoughts and dreams. And writing was always a way that helped me kind of move forward and process things and get into that kind of that emotional landscape that I've always had. So over the course of the years, I've written thousands of poems, and I love poetry and I love prose in particular. I'm a sucker for these long, winding paragraphs of poetry, which contain very little structure sometimes, but maybe are carried along by just a rhythm or like just feelings and almost like a musicality to them that I love. And I love prose that is vivid and paints a picture. A lot of times it's like I try to almost paint with it. And so when you read the paragraph of prose or the poetry, it's like you can kind of step back and hopefully you're left with the overall feeling of the moment that I've been trying to preserve or create to be an infinite kind of eternal thing. And so, yeah, my Patreon page has been so, so beautiful and so surprising and wild. I started that almost 2 years ago now. I had thousands of poems, like I said, and I was like, well, I would like to share these in some capacity, in some real way, and maybe people would have some interest in it. And so I'll start a Patreon page, and I don't know what it's going to look like or what it's going to turn into. And almost 2 years later, we have it's a small community, but it's a really brilliant community, kind and generous. It's really become a collaborative thing where, yes, I share my day-to-day poetry on there or music or art in general or whatever it is. And also once a month we do poetry reading where I invite everyone in the page to submit their own poems, and I'll give a prompt and then I'll record like a long video at the end of each month where I'm reading through everybody else's work and then I post it and then we have this kind of community discussion about all the poems in the comments beneath the video. So it's become a real like collaborative experience and a real intimate place. And it's just beyond my wildest dreams as far as what I thought it could be, because it's amazing to see. There's so many poets in the world. It's a nice opportunity for people to have their work be read, and I think that's important. That gives meaning to a writer. You can write so much for yourself, but as soon as someone else gets their eyes on it and reports back to you, like that's an engagement that I think is necessary. It's just been really amazing. So yeah, I don't know, I never expected it to last this long. And I kind of love that it is the size that it is, and those are some of my favorite parts of the month, going on there and engaging with it. And it's been a great outlet for me as well, and I think poetry will always be an outlet for me. I'm writing poetry pretty much every day, and naturally I think because I'm drawn to that kind of prose, I think that it bled all over Blue Graffiti. It just so happened that it also felt like the best way for me to write the novel that I wanted to write. And it just so happened to be the style that I love to write in. So it's that contrast, it is the minutia of his day-to-day life. And there is a slowness to it in parts. And there is this feeling of being so far in Cash's mind with this beautiful inner landscape of all these wild thoughts and emotions and kind of poetic way that he views the world that he wouldn't even really recognize in himself as poetic, which is an essential part of who he is, I think. He has trouble calling himself a writer, or certainly not an intellectual or anything, but obviously he is. And it's through that kind of poetic prose sometimes that you really get to see the beauty that he sees the world with and that he carries inside himself.
Some of my favorite parts of the novel really just relate to Cash's relationships with his friends and the people that are closest to him, as well as with those who just kind of come into his life temporarily and then leave. Like, I don't want to, how do I say this in a non-spoiler way? He takes a
Yeah.
trip. The older woman he meets when he takes a trip. And
Nancy.
Just yes, his connection with Nancy and just, getting to know this older woman and just kind of stepping into her life and just experiencing that. And I just really love the relationships in this novel. And so, what inspired you to bring in those characters who are only in there for a little while and just come and go and kind of leave their mark?
Thank you for that. I love to hear that from someone who's read the novel and to pay attention to that kind of thing because it's so important. Because the thing about Cash and the thing about his love for or where he is and his love for the world, every person that passes through his life has incredible meaning to him. Everyone matters, even in passing, even if he's admiring them from afar. Another similarity is this idea that I could be out to eat, or I could be on the sidewalk, or I could be somewhere and I could see somebody that I've never met, that I have no idea who they are or whatever, and I see them and I have such an overwhelming compassion for them, such an overwhelming like love for them that it honestly moves me. Honestly, I could get like tears in my eyes literally just thinking about somebody who is going through their life and is trying to make a run of it in the world. And I think Cash has that kind of love for people and that interest in people. When he sees someone, he really sees them and he really thinks about them and he gives them his time and his energy fully without it being like even like a super conscious effort. It's just who he is. You get to see who Cash is through these interactions, but it's also, like I said, it's this tapestry of the world. Everyone is essential to him. So whether it's a young kid in Johnston or if it's Nancy in Cambridge, where you get to explore the real people of the world. Nancy's one of my favorite characters in the entire book. She's so real and she's so wise and she's so loving and she's so essential to the world that Cash is so attached to. He sees the elderly as these magnificent, wise, brave, beautiful people. And he has such a reverence for them. And for him to be able to serve her or hang out with her or just speak with her and his longing for her to be in her presence and to be someone who can make her happy and can give her meaning and to help her feel that her life is astonishing in a way and that she's not alone. It's such a lovely thing to explore within Cash. So he kind of went through that with Nancy. It's his love for people, and his compassion for people and his desire to bear witness to everyone's lives. When we're at our lowest and we're at our darkest, I think it's when we feel isolated and alone and maybe that no one sees us. I think one of the essential bits of Cash is that he wants to bear witness to the people that he loves. He wants to write their names in the sky. He wants to fill their names with his history books. He wants to preserve them and, in a way, make them immortal by doing so. So when he writes and when he talks, it's kind of this thing of saying, I see you, your life matters, your life is beautiful, your life is interesting, even if it might not be the flashiest, if it might not be the most crazy or wealthy or whatever it is, it's kind of this recognition that we're all in this together in a way, and I will remember you, if that makes sense.
It does, and it's beautiful, truly.
Oh, thank you very much.
So, obviously, we're recording this in advance, but it'll be on your release day and the launch of your book tour, where you get to go back to the Midwest, back,
Mhm.
back home and traveling all through the Midwest for your book tour. How does that feel?
That is really, really, really surreal still. I mean, every day it gets a little bit closer and I'm hearing about like how many people are going to be there or the events being sold, like almost sold out, overflowing, whatever. The people that are meeting me along the tour are astonishing. I'm so thankful for them to be there. Lee Bardugo in Los Angeles, Emily in Chicago, Christian Colson in New York, and Pat Rothfuss in Stevens Point. It's like I'm honored to be sharing the stage with all these people and these writers and artists that I respect. And then the fact that people will be showing up and wanting to talk about Blue Graffiti and what it meant to them, or just to even to see me, or for whatever reason they're showing up, it's quite an honor. And I don't think it's really going to dawn on me until I'm in Seymour, responding to that kind of support and that kind of love, and people being genuinely interested in this thing that I've written. I mean, even the response so far, hearing like excitement people have around the book. It's my first one as well, so I don't know anything about the process. I don't know how it's going to be received, and obviously it's a very vulnerable book and close to my heart. there's a bit of risk involved when you're creating something, so and you have to be prepared as an author to face the other side of that. Maybe it doesn't resonate, or maybe stylistically it doesn't really move someone, or maybe it's just not for them or whatever. That's all fine. And that's all something you have to be able to accept and embrace as an artist, and to have people say, "Ah, I see your work, I've read your work, this moved me, this meant something to me. I actually want to show up to a book event or have you sign a book." I mean, that's like the most beautiful, inspiring thing I could ever do. And that's really the only reason I want to create art and be a part of art in the first place, or as a writer or as an actor or anything. It's all because I want to be a light in the world. I want to spread goodness. I want to be a part of that story myself. Bring that light, bring that understanding, or bear witness to the people in my life, or be kind and to say that, hey, you're not alone. I see you. Here's me sharing myself with you. Maybe hopefully this helps. Maybe this resonates, and maybe you're not so different. You and I, we can be connected while we're here. So
You are an artist in multiple ways, from your poetry and your writing, as well as being an actor. Are there ways that you feel the expression between these art forms are they similar in any way between writing and acting?
I think so. At the base level, I think storytelling. In acting, there's this desire for me to want to understand the people around me and to be somebody else for a while, and to really feel and experience what that is, and to tell a story where someone else sees themselves in another and is moved by it and transformed by it and enlightened by it. I think it's the same process with writing. I think as a consumer of literature, when I get so excited about books, is because I feel that immersion. I feel that myself meshing with something else, and my understanding growing, and my perspective deepening. I think art is this communication with ourselves and the world around us, this exploration of what it means to be human and what it means to be here. And that's the power of storytelling. And these things that we record and we tell ourselves are important to us and maybe those around us. It's a different art form in the sense of acting is very obviously performative. It's visual. It's so active. There's so many different elements going on in the process, whether it's the actor, it's the writer, it's the director, it's the DPs, it's the lighting. It's such a cohesive thing and this moving, uh, wonderful expression, and very community driven. With writing, it's like most of my writing is done by myself at a desk. A lot of times can be a very solitary act. The impetus is on you as the writer, in so many ways. And it's different in that regard. In the same way, it's beautiful because no one has to give you permission to write. You can sit down and do it anywhere, anytime, for as long as you want. A really accessible art form. Whereas acting is like, well, most of our careers, even the ones that are fortunate enough to get work professionally and to do that, most of your acting career, as far as working on the craft, is done waiting for someone to say, okay, I choose you. I want you to be a part of this project. This is where I think both art forms kind of collide. The best artists seem to make it about how they engage with the world, what they're experiencing, what they're witnessing, what they're seeing, what they're internalizing, and how they're engaging with their environment. Are they trying to expand? Are they trying to understand? Are they trying to experience and risk and, be vulnerable and be open and be hurt and experience great joy and happiness? And how can you love deeply and hurt deeply and bring all of that into your work? As an actor, even if someone's not saying, yes, I want you for my project, I give you permission to work with me on this. Even if they're not, you have to reframe it in your mind to be like, it's already happening. I am an actor, I am an artist because of the way I'm choosing to live and engage with my life. And the acting part of it, the craft, that's when I get to take all of this as an artist and I get to and be a mirror or representative of what I've seen or feel or whatever story I'm telling. And that's the same as a writer, it's very necessary, because when that action stops and when you start removing yourself from life and the world and the people that inspire you or make you think or challenge you or make you feel, it's what are you going to draw on, And these are the things that make the dream landscape come to life. And the crafts are different, but they have been informing one another, at least for me, since the beginning. I think the key is just staying on that creative path and that creative way to choose to live. And I think both art forms are able to rise through that.
Did you always know that you wanted to be an artist?
I think I did in a sense. I think I knew whether or not I voiced that or gave real conscious thought to that until I was older is a different thing. I think that I always knew that I loved writing. I always knew that I loved movies. I loved fantasy. I loved fantasy books. I loved escaping down and into something that was apart from where I was when I was younger. And I always felt more seen. And I always felt more free in these worlds, even with my friends who were doing theater and choir in high school and these communities. That kind of artistic creativity and kind of feeling that you get around communities, I think was always something that I felt more at home in. But, most of my life I grew up as an athlete and, I wanted to play professional basketball for quite a while. And I was going to probably be a lawyer or something along those lines. I took academics very seriously. And it was just, I was on a more straight line path. I experienced a lot of success in those worlds. And I kind of kept doubling down on that as I got older. And it wasn't until college when I was taking loads of theater classes, kind of in secret acting classes, and just singing and creating all the time. But it wasn't until I was probably like 20 years old where I really had to sit myself down and say, hey, man, like there's something here that makes me happy. Everything in me, intuition wise, told me to pursue art and told me to pursue acting. And writing was, I was always going to write regardless, but acting as a career, as a future, and something that I could pursue. And even if I was going to be locked away in black box theaters for the rest of my life, it still sounded better to me than being a lawyer, for example, or like any other job that I couldn't see myself doing. When I transitioned out of that high academia and high athletic pursuits and really gave my life over to theater when I was in undergrad, that's when the entirety of my life changed. I want to take in as much of the world as possible, and I need to grow as a person and challenge myself and all my perspectives and beliefs and who I am and my feelings, and just really figure out what it means to be alive and to be an actor, but as a person. And that's the process that I've fallen in love with the most in my life. It's just been the most beautiful journey, honestly.
That is beautiful.
Thank you. So I have a couple passages from Blue Graffiti that I could read, a couple like prose paragraphs that are not going to spoil anything, just to get a taste, kind of very much environmental mood things where it's like something he's seeing and, just the way he talks about where he is.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, cool. All right. I let Johnston High fade in my rear view and continue on. A few miles through the country and I'll be home. God, my whole life in this town, an eternity right here. I'll be 30 soon, 3 decades. 3 decades of childhood sidewalks, parks, schools, longing, and hills. Every hidden beautiful corner of Johnston I knew and loved so well. My heart beats and belongs to these simple times, the nostalgia and the undeniable hope of these country roads and the wind on the inside of my Saturn swirling. My hair moves in the wind and there are no clouds or smoke in the sky. It's clear as always, running straight up to heaven. The road feels smooth and familiar. It beckons. It begs me to drive. I smile and breathe. I bet I can ride on through morning. I know the road will take me wherever I please. It's that kind of feeling, that number on the dial. And it almost happens. I almost grip the fading leather wheel and go after it. I almost fetch me a spot somewhere in Montana or Colorado, somewhere new and promising, somewhere waiting. Ah, another night. I'll leave some other time when the stars aren't burning so bright, when Johnston isn't so silent and nice. That's a little piece I stumbled across this morning.
Oh yeah, just stumbled across it. It's so beautiful.
Thank you.
That was honestly, truthfully, that was one of my favorite passages of the whole novel.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, so I'm glad you picked that one.
Oh, that's so crazy. That's so fucking cool.
And you were just doing the audiobook, right?
Yeah, I finished it last week. It was sensational doing that. It was one of my favorite creative pursuits I've ever done. I didn't know what to expect, really. I'd never done that before. I knew that I loved doing voiceover and voice work, but I never obviously read an audiobook, and I didn't even know exactly how it was all going to play out with Blue Graffiti. And I got in there and I started working with my mate Andrew, who was such a lovely, light, and beautiful person. And we just got down and did it in this little studio and brought the thing to life. And what a blessing, to be able to be the one that gave voice to it. Having written it myself was just such a special, special honor. And I really do believe that the audio version of Blue Graffiti is something entirely its own and is something that people are going to want to check out because, like I said, it's my book. So the rhythms in it and the feeling, it was such a great opportunity for me to bring that to life through my voice and through my narration and through me being Cash. And I really think that it turned out beautifully. So I'm super excited for people to listen to that and give it a shot.
You recite it beautifully, so I am personally
Thank
very
you.
excited to check out the audiobook.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it was so cool to give voice to it, and I think that it adds a whole other dimension to the storytelling. So if you like audiobooks, hopefully I did this one justice.
Well, I just want to say that I am genuinely so happy for you through this
Thank you.
whole process. It is wonderful. I'm sure it feels like such an amazing accomplishment to be able to, not just finish writing the novel, but actually get it out there and to
Yeah.
have people pick it up and put it in their hands. And
Yeah, thank you. Honestly, it means a lot. I appreciate you having me on. Thank you to everybody who's reading the book and corresponds with me about it and tells their friends and unnamed for, publishing the book and believing in me and everybody else who's in the acknowledgments. It's just been such a humbling thing. And I'm excited to get out there and talk about it more and hopefully get as many people to read this story and, hopefully be moved by it as possible. So yeah, I appreciate you having me on as well and kind of helping me share it.
yeah, absolutely. I'm happy that you decided to join us. Thank you, everyone, for listening. This has been Must Love Books. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Patreon under at Must Love Books Podcast. Thank you and happy reading.
When your company earns unlimited 2% cash back on all purchases with Capital One, that's serious business. So Stephen at SandCloud got a serious business card, the Spark Cash Plus card from Capital One.
We used our 2% cash back to help build our retail presence.
Savvy, Stephen.
And we get big purchasing power, so our business can spend more and earn more.
The Spark Cash Plus card from Capital One. What's in your wallet?
Terms and conditions apply. Find out more at CapitalOne.com/SparkCashPlus.